Okay, we are ready to go.
All right, thank you. All right, everyone, welcome to the November 27th meeting, the Land Use and Waterfront Committee meeting. My name is Majid Abdul Samad, and I am the chair of the committee. Tonight, we are joined by Assistant District Manager Brendan Berg. This meeting called to order at 7:04. As a reminder, New York State law now requires all committee board members who are not able to attend the meeting in person to have their cameras and their first and last names displayed from the time the meeting is called to order until the meeting is. Members of the public who are attending virtually, you can raise your any questions or comments that you have through the Q&A feature of Zoom. Members of the public who are in the room here in person, you can raise any questions you have by raising your hand. If there's time following the committee's discussion, we will field questions from the public. We need a volunteer to take meeting minutes tonight. If you're able to volunteer, thank you so much. You're welcome. All right, Susan will be taking meeting minutes. Taking attendance by roll call. Brendan will conduct the roll call.
Committee members, I will call your name. When your name is called, please say present. I will announce if there is quorum. Majid Abdul Samad.
Present.
Victoria Benatar.
Present.
Jim Collins. Okay, I do see Jim here. So
Here.
John DeRico.
Present.
Sandy McKee.
Present.
Rich Mintz.
Present.
Larry Shire.
Present.
Sandra Sharad.
Present.
Letty Simon.
Present.
Susan Steinberg.
Present.
Gabe Turzo.
Present.
Brian Van Nieuwenhoven.
Present.
Excellent. We have a quorum.
Full house, great. The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and is reflected on the screen before you. If there's no objection, we will adopt the agenda. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the agenda, please raise your hand. Okay, seeing none in person or on call, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. The minutes from the October 23rd meeting were distributed also ahead of time by the board office. If there are no objections, we'll adopt them as drafted. Members of the committee, if you object, please raise your hand. All right, seeing none in person or on the screen, the October 23rd meeting minutes are adopted. They will soon be available on the CV6 website. All right, quick ground rules in order to conduct an efficient meeting, observing the following. No one may speak until granted the floor. Committee members who are here in person, if you have a question about the committee business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand and I'll identify you so you can speak. Committee members unable to attend in person, if you have a question about committee business, you may raise your hand through Zoom and I'll identify you so you can speak. All committee members, it is extremely important that only one person speaks at a time and that members of the public watching at home can understand what is being said by each committee member. The chat function for committee members present via Zoom should not be used for committee business or questions about the agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used to alert us any technical difficulties you are having or to state in writing, like an email address, information that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. Right, so with that, the tonight's agenda. We have a full agenda today. We'll try to get through it as fast as possible and get out here in a reasonable time. We are going to jump right in with a public hearing on the proposed City of Yes for Economic Opportunity, proposed citywide zoning text amendments by New York City Department of City Planning. And for that, we are joined by, I see Allison Song is on and others from DCP.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to just go ahead and share my screen. Let me make sure that everyone can see it. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Do you mind if you sit over there so I can look? Yeah.
Great. All right. Welcome. I want to give a big thank you to all of you for taking the time to hear this proposal about City of Yes for Economic Opportunity. My name is Ali Sung, and I'm a borough planner at the New York City Department of City Planning. And tonight I'm joined by my two colleagues from the Manhattan office, Ozka, who's a team leader, and Matt, who's another borough planner in our office. Today, I'll be providing an overview of the text amendment, but more detailed information on the zoning text is available on DCP's website and within our zoning application portal. My presentation is about 30 minutes long, and I'm happy to answer questions at the end. So City of Yes for Economic Opportunity is the second of 3 citywide initiatives to modernize and update our city's zoning regulations, part of the city's vision for a more equitable City of Yes. The other 2 proposals are City of Yes for Carbon Neutrality, which you've already heard about, and City of Yes for Housing Opportunity, which is an inclusive citywide approach to our city's housing crisis that aims to expand and diversify the housing supply and ensure that every neighborhood does its part to help meet housing needs and provide equitable access to housing for all New Yorkers. That proposal is expected to start public review next spring. So before we get into the policy itself for this text amendment, let's take a moment to review what zoning governs when it comes to businesses in New York City. Zoning defines hundreds of uses or business types and sorts them by district and regulates how things like what kind of business activities you can do in your space and also how big those can be. But in many cases, the way that zoning regulates businesses hasn't been updated in more than 60 years, and there are outdated, sometimes counterproductive regulations on business activity, like setting a strict square footage cap on how much space a bakery can devote to baking. Knowing that our zoning for businesses was in need of a refresh, the department has been asking small business owners, chambers of commerce, business improvement districts, industrial service providers, and other stakeholders across the city ways that zoning might be getting in the way of establishing or expanding businesses. The City of Yes for Economic Opportunity team has met with over 100 groups, had 5 public information sessions, and heard from countless New Yorkers about their challenges, and this proposal has been shaped by those concerns. Naturally, a lot of what we've heard is that it can be challenging to run a business here in New York City, and dealing with government regulation is often frustrating, slow, confusing, or seemingly illogical. And often, all of this red tape makes investing in businesses really hard. And that in turn contributes to our city being less vibrant, having fewer people being able to start a business, having one more vacant storefront, having one more business have to leave their neighborhood or the city overall. Our zoning rules are holding businesses back by either restricting them outright from locating, regulating how they do their business with some sort of old or complicated rule that's just not clear, in ways that cost businesses both time and money. Our overarching vision for this initiative is to make sure that our zoning works for our economy and not against it, and having a zoning resolution that's more simple, more adaptable, and more modern. Before I go into our proposals, let's take a look at the economic context in Community District 6 in particular. Here's a recent snapshot of the economy. There are about 198,000 jobs in the district, with the highest concentration in office-based industries, followed by institutional sectors, education, and then healthcare. Private sector employment is at 94% of the level it had been before the pandemic, so jobs have not fully recovered. This is slightly lower than the Manhattan average economic recovery and lags behind the city overall. Zooming into the ground level, there are close to 3,000 storefronts in the district that are located on neighborhood streets and along commercial corridors, as you can see on the map on the right. About 17% of these storefronts are vacant, a rate that is slightly higher than the Manhattan average storefront vacancy and higher than the city overall. Our proposed zoning changes would make it easier to fill empty storefront space by giving businesses more certainty on where they can locate and what they can do with their space, and by removing outdated zoning restrictions on businesses. So how do we achieve this? All of our proposals in this text amendment fall under 4 overarching goals. First, we want to make it easier for businesses to find space and grow. Second, we want to support growing industries. We want to foster vibrant neighborhoods. And finally, we want to create new opportunities for businesses. I'll now go through each of the 18 proposals, starting with the 6 proposals in Goal 1. These proposals aim to make it easier for businesses to find space and grow by lifting zoning barriers so they can locate closer to their customers. In most cases, our zoning rules governing businesses have not been updated since the early 1960s, and it's long past due to update our zoning to reflect and respond to today's economy. So firstly, today, storefronts that are deemed non-conforming face an arbitrary 2-year time clock for reactivation, or else they have to remain vacant, a direct contributor to vacancy in our city. We're proposing to remove this time clock so that vacant storefronts can be reoccupied. Currently, this arbitrary time clock does not apply in R5 through R7 districts, which are shown on this map in gray. This proposal would expand this to all residential districts, making the rules simpler and more consistent while also reducing vacancy. The green portions on this map highlight where the new text would expand these provisions. For our next proposal, C1 and C2 districts are very similar to one another in terms of the uses they allow and their neighborhood scale. C4 through C7 districts also allow uses at a similar scale to one another. However, the few minor differences in use regulations within these two groups make locating common neighborhood businesses like bike rental shops and movie theaters more confusing. In many places in the city, similar zoning districts are located along the same corridor or on opposite sides of the street, and yet allow different types of businesses. This routinely holds back business location or expansion. Proposal 2 aims to simplify these regulations by allowing the same uses in C1 that are allowed in C2 and allowing a consistent set of uses in C4 through C7. So to clarify, here are the uses currently permitted in C1 and C2 districts today. Residential, community facility, retail, and office use are currently allowed in both districts, including things like bars and restaurants, vets, barbers, and bike sales. So this would not change. Personal and business services, entertainment, hotel, and wholesale are currently only allowed in C2, but under this proposal, they would be allowed under both districts, as they are often already located alongside each other on neighborhood commercial corridors. Similarly, here are the current and proposed uses permitted in C4 through C7 districts. The proposal would simplify these regulations such that all of these uses would be allowed in C4 through C7 districts, except that residential would still not be permitted in C7. As part of Proposal 2, we're also removing restrictions that prohibit certain permitted uses from locating on the ground floor in C4 and C5 districts. When the zoning resolution was written, the kinds of small-scale clean manufacturing that exists today were not considered. The way these businesses are treated currently is stuck in the past. Proposal 3 would allow small-scale clean production like a pottery studio, a bakery, a coffee roaster, or a jewelry maker, or other things of that nature to locate in commercial districts for the first time, instead of only being allowed in manufacturing districts. Currently, commercial districts permit a very limited range of production, some of which is obsolete. We recognize that there will be concerns around quality of life in relation to some kinds of production, so the businesses included in this update would be subject to both current and new additional environmental regulations and standards to ensure that they're not negatively impacting their neighbors. We think that this proposal would make a big difference in helping New Yorkers who want to make things and sell things in the same space and also benefit from local retail foot traffic. That space would be less than 5,000 square feet in local C1 and C2 districts and up to 10,000 square feet on the ground floor in C4 through C7 districts. Our current rules for loading docks make it difficult for buildings to change over time. When businesses expand or new businesses move into a building, they're often required to add additional loading docks, even if they don't need them or if the building can't physically accommodate them. Proposal 4 would allow for older commercial buildings to evolve by not mandating a business tear apart the ground floor of a building to provide new loading docks. Today's zoning allows for many buildings to have a mix of residential and commercial uses, but zoning sometimes restricts businesses from being able to use upper floors. This limits the options for new buildings to be built that contain both residences and businesses, and for older buildings to adapt over time. We want to enable renovations and new construction of mixed-use buildings in places where it makes sense by allowing commercial uses at the same level or above residences. provided that a complete separation between uses is maintained with separate entrances and elevators, as shown in this diagram. Finally, our zoning is full of antiquated terms like typewriter repair, and it's hard for newer business types like cell phone repair shops to know where they can locate. Many new and startup businesses who may be unfamiliar with the zoning resolution have a hard time understanding which use category they pertain to, and it may cost significant time and money to get the answers they need to locate their business. This disproportionately disadvantages small and startup businesses and advantages bigger and more established businesses. Proposal 6 would modernize the terms we use and reorganize them with compatible or similar uses to simplify and update our zoning resolution. On to the second goal. We want to support growing industries by reducing obstacles in zoning for emerging business types. Each of the industries highlighted in this second goal, urban agriculture, life sciences, nightlife, amusements, and home-based businesses, faces ambiguity or outdated restrictions in our zoning, which we aim to address in proposals 7 through 11. Currently, businesses that want to operate indoor agricultural facilities like vertical farming within commercial areas face uncertainty in today's zoning rules. Proposal 7 would clarify that indoor agriculture is allowed in C districts, so more food can be grown closer to communities. Proposal 8 is focused on life science laboratories. Under current regulations, life science laboratories face confusing and outdated rules that slow the development of new facilities. We would make it clear that labs without potential for environmental hazard are allowed in commercial districts. And we'd also expand where an existing special permit can be used so that labs might be able to locate in the future closer to research centers like hospitals and universities. Restaurants and bars currently face confusing regulations on whether they can host concerts, dancing, comedy shows, or open mic nights. Proposal 9 would change the rules so that they're based on the size of the venue rather than the activity, so that you only see small venues in neighborhood commercial corridors and larger venues in areas with more density and in manufacturing districts. Under current regulations, a restaurant or bar is allowed to have live music today in any commercial district, whether that live music takes the form of a background dinner accompaniment or a full band with amplified sound. But in some places, that same restaurant might be prohibited from having the band charge a cover or advertise its showtime, or from hosting other forms of live entertainment, such as comedy or open mic nights. Furthermore, it's still illegal in certain areas under zoning to dance in a bar, club, or restaurant, even though the City Council repealed the cabaret law several years ago. New York City has a long history of discriminatory practices regarding nightlife, and our zoning is a relic of the past in how it continues to restrict ticketed music, comedy, and dancing in many locations. Proposal 9 aims to clarify when a bar or restaurant can host dancing or other forms of entertainment with posted showtimes or cover charges by regulating businesses based on capacity, not activity. That means that live comedy, DJs, dancing, and ticketed events would now be treated the same under zoning, but venues would have their occupancy limited to 200 people, roughly the size of a regular storefront, when locating in neighborhood commercial districts and commercial overlays. Bigger venues would be limited to central business districts like Midtown and the city's industrial areas. Now, we know that sometimes bars and restaurants can create concerns in the community, and we want you to know that we've been working closely with our colleagues at the Mayor's Office of Nightlife and other city agencies to protect quality of life for New Yorkers. DOB and FDNY rules around occupancy and safety, DEP regulations for amplified sound, and community board stipulations during the liquor licensing process all help us ensure that venues are being good neighbors. And programs like Mend NYC can step in to mediate any lingering issues that may arise between nightlife venues and community members. It's long past due to repeal the cabaret law, and this proposal finishes the job while keeping nightlife venues small in neighborhood settings. Currently, zoning has outdated terms for defining experiential amusement businesses, like virtual reality or children's arcades. and it often restricts these types of businesses to Coney Island or the city's industrial areas. We would simplify and modernize how zoning treats amusements and recreational activities to make it clear that these businesses are allowed indoors and at a small scale on neighborhood streets and at a larger scale in office districts. Many New Yorkers start their business in their homes, and zoning allows for a wide range of home business types, including lawyers, jewelry makers, and music teachers. But it prohibits specific occupations like barbers and interior designers, and includes other restrictions that hold back business creation. We're proposing to enable entrepreneurship with modern rules for home-based businesses while keeping in place safeguards to ensure that any home-based businesses are being good neighbors. Our third goal is to foster vibrant neighborhoods by ensuring that businesses contribute to active, safe, and walkable streets. Economic vibrancy isn't just about what occurs inside a building, but also how a business interacts with its surroundings. Right now, inconsistency in existing streetscape regulations can result in business activity that spills out into the public right-of-way, creating conditions that are unpleasant and even unsafe for pedestrians and cyclists. Our three proposals in this goal are designed to ensure that businesses contribute to active, safe, and walkable streets. Streetscape conditions like long blank walls and drive-throughs break up retail streets and can create unpleasant, unsafe conditions. But in vast parts of the city, there are no rules whatsoever to prevent new buildings from making conditions worse. Proposal 12 would create a consistent and easy to understand baseline set of rules for commercial ground floor design, ones that are more responsive in areas with greater pedestrian activity and more relaxed in the city's more auto-oriented corridors. This new streetscape framework has 3 cumulative tiers that would apply to new construction buildings, but also when significant alteration requires DOB sign-off. Tier A, which is shown here in teal, would apply to in most areas zoned as commercial or in light industrial districts where residents are allowed. In these areas, blank walls in excess of 50 feet would require some kind of mitigation, whether it's a mural, planting, or ideally some form of transparency. Parking would have to locate to the side or the rear of a zoning lot where feasible, and new drive-throughs would have to go through a discretionary process at the BSA to ensure that they don't lead to unsafe conditions for pedestrians. Tier B applies to all of the portions in Tier A that fall within the transit zone. In addition to the requirements in Tier A, Tier B would also require additional rules such as ground floor use requirements, storefront transparency requirements, and restrictions on curb cuts. Tier C consists of existing special purpose districts, as well as other designated geographies in the zoning resolution. In these places, all of the regulations in Tiers A and B would apply, and the unique elements of each special district would be retained, enhancing the design of these unique geographies while rectifying inconsistencies that make it harder for businesses to know the rules. In addition to special districts, all commercial districts mapped within or with a residential equivalent of R9 or R10, or where the commercial FAR is greater than 10, would also be considered Tier C. These high-density districts already have streetscape requirements on wide streets, so including them in Tier C simplifies the regulations. This new framework is designed to be simple, flexible, and in most places only intervenes to prevent the worst instances of building design that diminish the economic vibrancy of a street. Here you can see how these 3 tiers would apply in CB6. Much of CB6 falls under Tier C, which is shown in purple because it contains commercial districts within or with a residential equivalent of R9 or R10. And the area in red falls under Tier B. Proposal 13 would rationalize and consolidate the range of auto servicing uses into 2 categories: light and heavy vehicle repair and maintenance. Heavy vehicle repair maintenance must be licensed by the state DMV and would continue to be allowed in industrial areas, while light vehicle repair could locate in C1 through C7 districts only with a special permit from the Board of Standards and Appeals. Currently, zoning does not allow for any delivery activity within buildings except in industrial areas, forcing the activity to occur on sidewalks and streets, which can create significant safety concerns for pedestrians and cyclists. Proposal 14 would create a new type of zoning called a micro distribution facility and allow these businesses to locate on a small scale in commercial areas, encouraging deliveries to shift to alternative modes of transportation and regulating the creation of local hubs for safe and sustainable deliveries to occur. Our fourth and final goal is to create new opportunities for businesses to open by establishing new zoning tools that can boost growth and business expansion. Our zoning resolution contains many kinds of tools which can be used to initiate a discretionary process, to change an area's underlying regulations, including special permits from the Board of Standards and Appeals, City Planning Commission authorizations, and special permits and zoning districts. As we're seeking to modernize our city zoning and support business location and growth, we also need to update our zoning toolkit so that businesses can have better access to pathways that enable their expansion or adaptation. Our last four proposals all create new kinds of discretionary zoning tools for the future economic success of our city. Many large-scale residential developments, such as NYCHA campuses, are zoned as residence districts, meaning that retail, services, and makerspaces cannot easily locate, and placing residents of these developments further away from local goods and services. Proposal 15 would create a CPC authorization to allow up to 15,000 square feet of commercial space in existing or new construction on a large-scale residential campus, giving residents greater access to basic necessities or the space to grow a new business. Some portions of New York City are not within walking distance of a local retail store, and no zoning pathways to potentially allow a new locally serving business to open exist. We're creating a new discretionary pathway where a business could initiate a process to locate a new corner store, provided that the store does not generate any environmental concerns or traffic congestion. In some instances, businesses lack options for waiving certain non-FAR related zoning rules. For instance, film studios often struggle to build sound stages because of certain zoning rules like yard requirements and setback heights. Or a clothing store might want to expand and occupy an empty second floor, but find that size limitations or location rules prevent them from doing so. In order to add flexibility on a case-by-case basis, we're adding a couple of discretionary mechanisms, including BSA permits for limited modifications, a CPC special permit for more substantial size increases, and a CPC authorization for bulk modifications. Lastly, in some instances, it's our zoning districts themselves that are obsolete. This is particularly true in our city's manufacturing or M districts. Currently, low-density options, physical design rules, and parking make it impossible to build loft-like buildings, even in areas where they already exist. Proposal 18 would create a range of new job-intensive zoning districts at a range of densities and heights that expand our zoning toolkit for future rezonings. Now that we've gone through all 18 proposals in this text amendment, we can take a quick look at where these proposals would apply in CB6. I won't go through each of these one by one, but I'll give this proposal to you all to look over more closely later, and it lists which proposal applies in which geography. This slide shows all of the proposals that apply to all of the zoning districts in CB6. This one shows all of the changes that would apply in C1 districts. This shows the changes that would apply in C2 districts. C4, there's only a little bit of C4. C5, C6, all residential districts, manufacturing districts, and then lastly, there are a few ways that the proposal seeks to make our overlapping sets of rules in special purpose districts easier for businesses to understand. Special districts in CB6 include the Special United Nations District, part of the Special Transit Land Use District, and part of the Special Midtown District. The text amendment alters some aspects of the special district to align ground floor use rules when they're inconsistent with the stated purpose of the district, redefines use regulations to match our new classification system, and streamlines and enhances corridor design rules. As we near the end of this presentation, I'd like to share a roadmap for the process to come. After more than a year of getting in front of as many audiences as we can, presenting our ideas for solutions to the problems that businesses face today, and soliciting your feedback and questions about these proposals, we're now in the process of going before every community board in the formal public review. This process will culminate in a city council vote sometime next spring. Although we've covered a lot in this presentation, I also want to point to a plethora of other resources about this text amendment that we have available on our website for you to look at as you reflect on these proposals. In addition, to assist in your review, we've prepared a checklist of the 18 components of the proposal, which you can use to indicate which parts you support and which parts you don't and why. The use of this checklist is totally optional, but it's designed to help you manage and communicate your considerations about the various components of the proposal and to enable us to best understand and absorb your feedback. If you want to use the optional checklist, you can upload it along with any other materials you provide to the Land Use Participant or LUP portal when you submit your recommendations. Thank you all so much for listening to a long and complicated presentation. I'm happy to take any questions now, and any questions that Matt, Ozka, and I are unable to answer tonight, we'll bring back to the project team and get back to you with answers.
Great. Thank you so much, Ali. Much appreciated. Very quickly, I'm just going to state the public hearing on City of Yes for Economic Opportunity, a proposed citywide zoning text amendment by New York City Department of City Planning is now open. If any members of the public want to speak on this matter, please raise your hand through Zoom or indicate your written statement or any questions in the Q&A. You will have up to 3 minutes to speak. Remember that before you begin speaking, you must state your full name and your affiliation. But first, we'll start with comments and questions from the committee. And before I pass it along, I just want to say, Ali, thank you. This was very helpful and comprehensive. Two things that we asked about in a resolution that we put out last month that I felt were still missing. That is the casino component of the amusement text amendment. That's number 10. I didn't hear mention of it, and I'm curious whether there's been any changes there. And the life sciences component as well, number 8. Specifically, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't realize you weren't done. Finish your question.
The life sciences, our question was about the guardrails the city has in place for safety and ensuring there's no contamination or any concerns with placing very sensitive facilities within residential areas.
Okay, so I can go ahead and start with the casino proposal because that's a pretty simple answer. The casino portion of this text amendment is no longer included in City of Yes for Economic Opportunity. It's traveling as a separate citywide text amendment. And I think that it was actually presented today at review session, the casino proposal, which is separate from City of Yes for Economic Opportunity. And I think that Steve has been in contact with CB6 leadership to talk about that proposal.
Got it. Yeah, thank you for clarifying. Yeah, he has, and we spoke to him, and I did watch as well the session today, but I just want to clarify. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. And then as for the life sciences, I think that I can answer it partially, and then if Ozka and Matt, you have any additional anything additional to say about it. The life sciences proposal is like these life sciences laboratories are very heavily regulated, not only by zoning, but also by a plethora of other government agencies. And part of the text for City of Yes for Economic Opportunity, part of the text for the laboratories sorry, I'm like just trying to find the exact language. Basically, the text for the laboratories that are defined in the zoning resolution is laboratories, this is in quotes, not including any danger or of fire or explosion, nor offensive noise, vibration, smoke, or other particulate matter, odorous matter, heat, humidity, glare, or other objectionable effects. So that other objectionable effects includes a lot, but basically we're looking for laboratories that are not going to have adverse impacts on the neighborhoods around them. And these laboratories are very heavily regulated. I don't know if Matt and Ozka, if you have
Yeah.
anything additional to add about that.
I can expand a little bit on that, Ali. And just, first, I think clarifying just that there's two changes that are happening as part of this proposal. One is to codify the definition of labs. And so that's not changing where labs are already permitted. They're already permitted in nearly all commercial districts, and they follow very strict rules for operation. And these are under city, state, and federal law. Some of these agencies that, have created these safety guidelines and do all these inspections include the FDNY, city and state health agencies, city, state, and federal environmental agencies, the NIH, and CDC. So this isn't something that's like, you can just create a lab just because it's allowed. We're just codifying the language that, again, these already are permitted uses in nearly all commercial districts, but there's just confusion in the way that the laboratories were defined in our zoning resolution that created uncertainties about like what that meant. So this is clarifying that definition is one thing. And the next thing it's doing is that clarifying the process for locating certain labs against certified labs in new areas, which is the special permit. So it's allowing additional spaces to get that special permit or be able to apply for that special permit, but it's not outright allowing or expanding where labs are permitted today.
Got it. Okay.
Wuhan
Thank you.
labs, don't worry.
Thank you for the clarification. All right. Opening it to the committee if there are any questions, follow-ups. 1, 2, 3, 4.
So I was writing like mad, and I'm not sure I got this in the right place, but it was a discussion of commercial, campus commercial. And I think you said something about this, there will be an authorization for 15,000 square feet. Did I get that right?
That is correct. Yeah, it's for
Sorry,
15,000 square feet.
are you talking about this proposal? Sorry, I'll
It
go
was
back.
number 15.
Yeah, 15,000 square feet.
Okay, but that's not going to end up being like a box, a chain store like a CVS or I mean, it's definitely going to be for small business, right? Or are we going to end up with another TD Bank or a Walgreens or something like that?
The idea here is to create some flexibility for stores on these residential campuses. They're up to 15,000 square feet. I don't know, Matt and Ozka, if you have an answer to the question of whether we can't regulate like which business takes advantage of this specific regulation, but I think that, yeah, I don't know, Matt, do you have an answer to that? I hear your concern, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll give a completely satisfying answer, just kind of building slightly. So I know that these, as you can see on this slide, that these CPC authorizations, they are subject to community board approval. We could definitely go back to kind of the CEO authors who are really in the weeds with all of this and get you a more specific answer about like what exactly community boards involvement would be in this process. Unless you have any thoughts.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say that this is a CPC authorization, so it's a discretionary action, and it would be referred to the community board as part of that process. And also, again, it's discretionary, so it's not allowed as of right. it would have to go before the CPC in order to be approved as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I would just note, again, as Ali mentioned, zoning does not control, the specific businesses. What it can control, and in this case, it is the size of the business. So it's really meant to be, a locally serving, community serving business in this case. And so the size of limitation of up to 15,000 square feet is one way that we can sort of ensure that this isn't something that is, too large for what this is intended for.
Thank you.
And my question's about a similar thing. These campuses are already built. So are these, is this additional FAR? Or would you have to be converting some of the residential spaces into commercial to have this work?
I'm not sure if there's a FAR, if the authorization is for an FAR exemption here, we can confirm that. But, again, not exactly answering your question, but I can say that a lot of these campuses tend to be underbuilt because they have so much open space. So I don't think FAR is much of an issue in most of these cases, but in the case where it might come up, we can get you confirmation about that.
So it's trading open space for commercial space, basically, is what the goal is here.
It'll depend on the application. So there's no one size fits all in these sort of spaces because they're all so constrained in how they're built. So some of this might be, an existing retrofit. Something might be in addition to a building. So those are sort of what, an authorization would look at, and again, for a CPC authorization for this, there is certain requirements, so findings that you can find in the zoning text that they have to meet to be able to apply for this authorization. So there are rules that will be governing, something like this.
And I had one other question. The proposal, I think it's proposal 12. We're getting a lot of flood walls in our district, and I think this proposal was about beautifying walls. And does it also apply to flood walls?
I'm not sure about that. I would have to get back to you. I don't know, Matt, Oscar, do you know if it applies to flood walls? I think
We have some pretty brutal.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. My understanding is that this is primarily aimed at walls of commercial frontages, but we could definitely inquire to find out if some of these would also be affecting some of those resiliency infrastructure projects.
It might be good to add it as something that would be valuable. Thank you.
All right, you can go first.
Okay, I was wondering if the proposal is contemplating to have two uses under the same commercial space. For example, a hair salon with a coffee shop, or a coffee shop with a bookstore, or something that maybe, two businesses together decide to rent a space and to share the space for a while. Is the plan allow for something like this?
Oh, go ahead, Matt.
I was just going to say, that's a really good question. I was just going to say I haven't gotten to the bottom of that question myself, and we could definitely relay that unless Ali and Oscar, you have thoughts on that.
I think that we can check back about that question.
Okay, so it's kind of dual uses.
If you know.
From my understanding, I think as long as there's two permitted uses, they could share the space. I've seen a lot of plant shops and coffee shops and things of that nature pop up, but we can definitely confirm.
Yeah, that was my inkling also, that if they're both permitted, that I think that they are allowed, but we can check because I've definitely seen it around the city.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Gabe, Jim, then Larry.
I'm just curious about 14, if I'm understanding it properly. Is this going to help alleviate the problem with FedEx and UPS blocking bike and bus lanes, or is this a different use it's addressing?
Well, we're hoping that it will help alleviate that to some extent by by allowing these micro distribution facilities to be sort of local hubs for distribution, but it will depend how they're utilized. We're just creating the framework that would allow for these micro distribution sites, and then we would hope that it would eventually help reduce the amount of loading from cars being parked in bike lanes, being parked on the sidewalk, etc.
So if I can follow up on that, actually, this was something we also brought up in our resolution. The concern was that this kind of paves the way for larger distributors, think Amazon, to come buy the storefronts, competing basically with small businesses, to convert them into micro distribution centers for themselves. So that would raise the value, adds competition on these stores. And I understand we have a lot of vacancy, but that would be hard to reverse a few years down the road. And just, again, our corner stores would all turn into micro distribution centers with bikes on the sidewalk. Is this something the city has thought about? I understand this is just the framework. The BSA needs to step in, but how have you thought about this?
I think to begin answering that question, is I think that all of these proposals are trying to work in tandem to create more opportunities for to kind of usher in more entrepreneurs into areas and to fill storefronts. And so I think we're seeing this as just one component of that mix of new sorts of uses and activities that would be happening on commercial corridors. Also, I think that I think you were saying earlier that, you know, these micro distribution centers for like an Amazon, so to speak, like would be popping up everywhere. I personally think that they would probably reach a bit of a saturation point, that there would actually, you know, at a certain point, it would not be cost effective to open them up in, like, you know, every single block. But that's just kind of my own speculation. We don't have a crystal ball, of course. Ali, do you have any thoughts?
I think that one thing is that, well, I guess you mentioned this, that these are relatively small sites as of right, 2,500 square feet in C1 and C2 and 5,000 in C4 through C7. So these aren't on the scale of an Amazon warehouse, and these larger spaces, as you said, would only be available via a BSA special permit or a CPC special permit, and those are both discretionary actions. Ozka, did you have any final thoughts on that?
No, I think that covers it. I think I would just note one other thing is a smaller scale wholesaling or storage is already allowed in many commercial districts, depending on the size of the establishment. So, you know, I don't think this will be creating a new use or loophole in that sense. This is really meant to help address the issue of so much of, you know, our economy going and depending on delivery systems, and how do we address that in a city that, you know, is depending on these deliveries, but we need to have solutions to those, you know, last mile and micro distribution, so we're not creating more issues of inequity, and especially in what related to, you know, issues related to the location of a lot of these distribution centers being in certain neighborhoods and things like that.
Yeah, currently a lot of these, you know, warehouses are located in just a few places in the city, and those places are overwhelmingly facing the burden of all of these trucks coming into their neighborhoods. And being able to have localized delivery means that we can have alternative modes of transportation, bike delivery of packages, and other potentially less noxious ways of delivering our goods.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'll speak for myself, but others have expressed that in principle, we're in agreement with what the city's trying to do here. We just think there's a next step that is not fully thought through. There's no, again, guardrail here, not to end up with sidewalks blocked by bikes. A lot of boxes just sitting there waiting to be picked up and organized, which could be a concern. But that's the last I'll say on it. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, and just saying that also we hear you, and absolutely we'll take back that feedback about having guardrails about that sort of thing. We'll take that back to the project team as well.
Yeah, on both of those issues, the issue that Susan raised and then Majid raised, I apologize for my voice, but sick. In all of this, did city planning at all ever consider formula business zoning so that we wouldn't have Amazon delivery or Walmart in the shop stores, or Walgreens drugstores doing their deliveries in these micro spots?
Can you
We
clarify
have
what? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
formula business zoning.
Yeah.
What do I mean by that? I mean that businesses like Amazon that have huge market power and multiple locations do not overwhelm the small business sector. That, you know, if you're a Walmart, you can go into a landlord, all right, and you can basically name your price, and the landlord can name his price. They generally sign the corporate parent, even though the individual business is usually separately incorporated. The parent will sign what's known as a keep well agreement. And the keep well agreement means that if for some reason unimaginable, frankly, that the Walmart goes out of business or has trouble paying the rent, then the corporate parent will step in and make it whole. What has happened is we're seeing a lot of Burger Kings or McDonald's or Dwayne Reed or Walgreen, I guess it is now. All these things are overwhelming the local small business community that you guys purport to be trying to help out. Likewise with these Amazon delivery shops. I think formula business zoning should have been on the table for the Department of City Planning ages ago. A second question I have is you guys released I thought this was terribly disturbing. You guys released a plan on the Friday after Thanksgiving to address the casino gambling zoning, and then you had a hearing on it today. That's in the public relations field. That's what we call taking out the trash, hiding something from the public. And I thought it was wholly inappropriate for Department of City Planning to do that. And I'm just wondering, would you be willing to take the proposal back and reissue it on a different day, so that the public can have a little more transparency on the release and on the and be better prepared to comment with respect to the new departmental regulation. Thank you.
Okay. So to start off with the formula business zoning, it's not something that I'm familiar with, but I'll go ahead and relay what you've said to the project team about considering something like that. And as for the casino text, the community boards were informed in advance, and there will be a public review period. It's not as though this has just been passed. There will be a public review period. Also, the review session presentation is available on our website for anybody to view, even if you weren't able to view it today. And the public review time period will not change based on the fact that this was separated out. It will still be the same length. And additionally, also, this proposal is only about City of Yes for economic opportunity, and the city wide text amendment for casinos will be separate, and you will also receive a presentation separately on that proposal.
Thank you, Ali. So in the interest of time, we'll go to Larry, then the questions online and in the room. Go ahead.
I'd like to focus on the darkened storefronts and what is being proposed here, which is not entirely clear with regard to ghost kitchens or businesses like Gorillas or GoPuff, which don't have any street level retail. I mean, customers coming in off the street to buy and transact business in person. In these instances where in effect the windows are kept dark, it looks like you've got a vacant space, even though there is some commercial activity going on inside. How does this zoning proposal attempt to deal with these situations, which are a current phenomenon?
Yeah, absolutely. This is something that we have heard a lot of concern about dark stores. And part of what we're doing to address it is in, let me go back to it. Sorry, 1 second. In our streetscape regulations, this is one strategy that we're using to combat dark stores, because we're having transparency requirements is something that we see as an important component in keeping storefronts active, making sure that stores are not able to paper over their windows and have everything hidden inside. That's something that we see as important. I don't know, Ozka and Matt, do you have additional thoughts on the dark stores question?
Yeah, I could just add that in on commercial corridors that are in the transit area, that these new streetscape regulations will be requiring commercial frontages to have at least 50% of their windows or their walls rather to be transparent. So to give a little bit more specificity on that.
And also maybe I'll just add one last thing is that because our streetscape regulations are applicable in C1, C2, and C4 through 7 districts, and also MX districts, this is applying to pretty much like all retail corridors. So places where we might have concerns about dark stores should be covered by these streetscape regulations.
And just one quick additional question.
Okay, Paul, go ahead.
Is there anything that could be used in this zoning regulation to help with the enforcement against illegal smoke shops?
I think, well, one thing I'll say is that the zoning resolution and the Department of City Planning is not the enforcement agency. That would be in most cases DOB, and in other cases other agencies depending on what the use is. So the zoning resolution isn't able to be like an enforcement tool because of what its sort of role is. I don't know if anybody has additional thoughts, Matt and Ozka. I would just say that like we're not in charge of enforcement. That falls under the jurisdiction of other agencies.
Well, because there used to be use groups and there could be prohibited noxious activity explicitly in the zoning resolution that could go forward.
Sure, yeah. The zoning resolution is able to prohibit certain uses in certain areas, certainly. But it's not able to crack down on enforcement. But if you have a suggestion on specific zoning districts that you think should be excluded, I guess we could take that feedback back to the project team.
And as a quick clarifier, When you say smoke shops, are you referring also to like cannabis
Yes.
businesses? Okay, just wanted to make sure I knew what you were referring to. So I know that City Council did recently pass a law giving the NYPD kind of more of freedom to enforce illegal businesses, like illegal cannabis shops being one of them, with fines that could go up to $10,000 per violation. So I know that at a city level, this is like definitely becoming more of a higher priority in terms of enforcement. But to echo what Ali said, unfortunately, zoning doesn't really factor into that. Our department doesn't factor into that, but there is other city agencies are taking it very seriously.
Well, noxious odors, for example.
Got it. So just in the interest of time to keep the agenda moving, I'll pass to the three folks online, Elaine, Robert, and Nathan. This is part of the public hearing for the City of Yes presentation. So please keep your questions on that subject only. And I understand we're not talking about the casino today, so feel free to drop that as well. And for the DCP team, let's take all the questions and then answer them all at once. And then I know we have Anne in the room. So go ahead, Robert.
Yeah. Hello. This is Nathan. The question that I was asking was, how do we know that, because when you say manufacturing, I think of like smokestacks and stuff like that. How do we know that the manufacturers are going to like follow these rules that we set forward with deleterious effects? That was my question for the city council.
Okay, thank you, Nathan. Elaine? You can unmute it, Elaine.
Okay, yes, hi. I wasn't
Hi.
Expecting to be unmuted.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was concerned. My questions was that I understand the zoning changes to update, to modernize is terrific, but I'm just, having lived here for a very long time, I'm very terrified that some of this might make the casino process a little easier. And that's why I'm just listening in tonight.
Okay, thank you for that.
Sure.
And do you have a comment or question, or was it already asked?
I kept waiting for people to ask them.
Go ahead.
I have several questions. Some of them I can take offline. One though is really relevant for our presenters, is that I'd love some more clarification about the 2-year lease. You were talking about, that was, you felt there was some restriction that encourages places to stay empty. Because, I mean, that's the biggest thing. And I think that goes back to something Jim mentioned, which is about going back to, and I wonder if you have looked at all the work we did on the Small Business Jobs Survival Act. If you are even familiar with that, because I think a lot of the work that was done, I think when Dan Gorodnik was a council member for this district. So I'm just kind of wondering, that's like one of my biggest questions.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? If
Do I get to ask my question?
Yes, go ahead, Robert.
Thank you. Hi, Rob. Thank you so much, everyone, for your service. And this looks like it's going in a great direction. And I appreciate the opportunity to ask a couple questions. One, with regards to the environmental aspects of things, with regards to water, is there a contemplation for, would it be the building landlord owner, or would the business going into be required to set up some sort of water treatment so that they're not discharging dirty water, toxic water back into our water systems? And B, with modifications, if buildings built before 1987 are disturbed, their pipes are disturbed, you can break loose lead and copper solder. So if it's mixed residential, you could be sending unsafe levels of lead and copper into the drinking water of the other residents in the building if you're not careful when you modify a water heater or a water tank. I am personally dealing with this right now, which is why I'm very passionate about this. So that's question one. And question two is, with the delivery with your proposal 14, it's wonderful that you're proposed having contemplation for all these delivery, but what about the refuse removal? Will there be any kind of regulation on how many nights a week can there be private garbage picking up in mixed residential neighborhoods, making noise because of all these increased businesses? It's already going to be busy with delivery vehicles, some of which are not captured by emissions regulations. Cold food storage still have diesel engines that are spewing environmental hazards into the air. So with the environmental concerns, is that being considered the environmental impact of delivery and the refuse removal?
Great, thank you, Robert. So Ali, feel free to give a brief response to these. I know we have some redundancies and some we'll take offline, but go ahead.
Sure. Okay, let's see. I'll go ahead and start with first question about how will we know that the small scale manufacturing will really be small scale manufacturing and not have huge smokestacks and how will we know that they're following these regulations? So I put this slide in here, but something that I wanted to mention is that zoning already allows this sort of small scale clean manufacturing in buildings that have residences in today's MX districts in places like Dumbo, Tribeca, and Williamsburg. And this has sort of been a test for something like this in sort of a small scale and has worked really well. And so that's something that we're looking to as an example while we're rolling this out in a larger geography. And then secondly, there will be two kinds of environmental requirements, the ABC requirement, which is a DEP air quality requirement, and then also the right to know, which concerns potentially hazardous substances. And zoning will require an architect or engineer to certify that the production or manufacturing activity won't have emissions that exceed the ABC bad air standards or generate any bad substances through the right to know regulation. And if somebody tries to operate outside of these rules, if they break these rules, they would be issued a zoning violation by DOB, and that could shut down the business. They would also be subject to violations from DEP, the Department of Environmental Protection. So there should be multiple methods to enforce this and make sure that these businesses are not being bad neighbors for residential tenants. And then maybe that in some ways answers some of your questions, Robert, about the same proposal about the environmental impacts of maybe some of these manufacturing businesses, but I know that you mentioned specifically looking at water and looking at alterations to the buildings, and that is something that I think I would have to look into and get back to you on the answer to that, unless Matt or Ozka, you know the answer to the water question or pipes. I would imagine that sort of thing in terms of like pipes being replaced happens in fully residential buildings also, and that it would probably be a similar situation as what's already occurring in buildings that have old pipes and eventually need to replace them regardless. But Ozka and Matt, do you have any thoughts on that one?
I'll just add that other community boards have also kind of mentioned concern having to do with older buildings, having many more, people frequenting them and how the kind of the inner workings of the buildings would be able to kind of function. And so you're not alone. And all of those sorts of concerns, we're absolutely relaying them to the team overseeing this because, it's a real concern and we want to make sure that we have a satisfying answer for you.
And then I can go ahead and just Elaine's question, or just maybe more of a comment that some of these proposals make her feel fearful about the casino process. And again, just reiterate that the casino process will be completely separate and is tied to the state's casino process. But that is separate from this application. And then the question from Anne about the 2-year lease, I can give a little bit more. Let me just go back to it. I'll just give a brief summary of what this is about. So in a lot of areas where buildings are older than the zoning resolution, there are non-conforming uses. So a store that's grandfathered in that maybe wouldn't be allowed under the current zoning resolution, but was there before, so it's allowed to stay. But what's happening now is that there is this rule that if that store or other use is vacant for 2 years, then it can't be reoccupied by that use. But a lot of the times these spaces have very particular hardware or different things that make them very well suited for one particular use, more maybe than uses that would be permitted under the zoning resolution. And these historic uses, the building is much better suited for. And so what we're doing here is allowing those to be reoccupied by their historic use, the use that they've been for many years, even if it's been more than 2 years of vacancy, because we have such high rates of vacancy. And this, a lot of the times, would just force the store to remain vacant because it can't be changed into a different use because it would be too expensive, because it's much better suited for the use that it was before. I don't know if that provides a little bit of clarity.
It does, thank you.
Okay.
But I'll just repeat my comments about looking back at the testimony and comments that about the Small Business Jobs Survival Act, because we don't want more Walgreens on every corner.
Right. Yeah, hopefully this proposal would be one that would support small businesses that have these historic uses from that are quite long ranging. But okay, and then sorry, let me get to the next question about the delivery and the garbage from the delivery. And I don't have an immediate answer to that. Matt and Ozga, do you have an answer about the garbage? If not, then I think that's definitely an important consideration that we'll bring back to the project team, thinking about how this will be worked out with the Department of Sanitation, how this will be worked out with trash pickup, etc.
Great. Right. This was a lot to go through, and we really appreciate you going through it in this limited time. So thank you all. I'm seeing no more comments or questions. So the public hearing on the City of Yes for Economic Opportunity is now closed. Thank you, Team DCP, and to everybody who asked questions and gave comments.
Yeah, thank you all for listening and thinking critically about all of these very important issues.
Awesome. Right, so moving right along to the second item on our agenda, and that is updates on the East Side Coastal Resiliency Project, bioswales. Thank you, Desiree, for waiting patiently to speak to us about this.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Let me share my screen. Okay, can you see that all right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, great. And you can hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Wonderful. All right, thank you very much, everyone. My name is Desiree Cazzo. I am from HNTB Lero, the program management team, working with the New York City Department of Design and Construction on the East Side Coastal Resiliency Project. Tonight we're here. We haven't been here in a little while. So tonight we're glad to be here to just give a few updates on the project. We're going to just give an overall update, not just focus on the bioswales again, since we haven't been here in a little bit. So I hope that's okay, but we will run through the slides quickly. And then Jeff Margulies from New York City DDC will speak to the last point about the flyover bridge. So just again, for those who may not visit our CB3 meetings or who have been on our past CB6 meetings, We have a robust community engagement team for the Eastside Coastal Resiliency Project. We have a project website where we post construction notices, the environmental monitoring information, presentations, newsletter, and our gallery. We have several programs that we put forth. We have the Esker to Your Schools programs, which which a few schools have participated in, where we come to the schools and present on the Eastside Coastal Resiliency Project and climate change. And it's been really successful. And if you know any other schools that might want that, please have them reach out to us. These are some photos here. We also have community construction liaisons who are our boots on the ground and sharing with the community the information to our stakeholders on the project. And then on the website, we have a Work With Us page, which you could visit as well for Work With Us resources. The community program and Work With Us outreach that we've completed in September, October, and November. It's not exactly updated through November, but it's getting a little cold out, so it'll be a little less as we move into the winter. But these are some of the recent events that we've had this fall, and we've been partnering with the Workforce One and their mobile unit to go out to the community as well. So just to get into the overview of contracts, so we will touch upon the projects that are listed on this page. Again, Project Area 2 is north of East 14th Street. Project Area 1 is south of East 14th Street. Parallel conveyance are these red lines that are within both Project Area 1 and Project Area 2. And then as mentioned, Jeff will just touch upon the Pinch Point flyover bridge area. So again, this is a high-level overview of our projects. We have, and again, this will be posted on the website. So for those of you who might be new to the CV6, we have this posted so you can review it in greater depth. But there's quite a bit of work happening in Project Area 1, and you'll see we just have one slide on that quickly, and that'll come up here in a minute. For Project Area 2, which is the CV6 project area, we have Astor Levy Playground open, half of Stuyvesant Cove Park is open, and over 2,600 feet of flood wall have been installed, as well as gates 9 through 17. So we're making really great progress on Project Area 2, and again, we're hoping to progress that more in the beginning of the new year, and we'll talk about that a little bit in the slides to come. We do have project galleries or construction galleries for all three projects, PA1, PA2, and PC. We are in the process of updating them, but they do have some really great pictures, especially of the construction of the flood wall system in Project Area 2. So please go ahead and visit that. For Project Area 1, we have the East River Park is closed south of Houston Street. So my mouse is not, oh, there we go. So it is closed south of Houston Street here. We do have some evening shifts in several of the project areas. And the newest work activity for Project Area 1 is the reconstruction or the construction of ball fields 1 and 2, which is down in the southern portion of the project. So we're really excited about that because that's the kind of first element of Project Area 1 that is starting to get reconstructed beyond the bridge abutments for Corlears Hook Bridge and Delancey Street Bridge. And so we are looking for those ball fields to have open with access in the kind of late May time. And then again, the Corlears Hook and Delancey Street pedestrian bridges, again, will be installed kind of in the first half we're anticipating of next year. And then there is ongoing work up through 10th Street, but the park north of East Houston Street is open for use. So for Project Area 2, these are a couple of photos, which if you've been down there, you've seen, but the greenway is looking really wonderful. We are, again, on target for the Stuyvesant Cove Park flood wall phase 2 to reopen the end of this year, the beginning of next year. And then the last piece will be that Murphy Brothers playground. And we have a photo of some of the construction work that's happening there. But again, this map here shows you, how far we've come from the beginning of the project. So we're really proud about that, and are working with our team to keep that moving forward. These are the gates that have been installed to date. Again, that's 9 through 18. I believe the other slide had 17, but these are all of the gates that have been installed. The purple are the swing gates and the red are the roller gates. And then there are just 2, 8, and 9, which are around the Con Ed area, and those are scheduled to be installed. Actually, I think those have been pushed to the beginning of next year. So again, that northern area of Stuyvesant Cove Park is open. The Greenway remains open, and then the park south of East 20th Street will hopefully open again at either at the end of this year or early next year. And then the Greenway connecting East River Park is expected to open late this year, which we are almost in late this year. So hopefully that'll open soon to reinforce that connection. The north entrance of Stuyvesant Cove Park is closed due to the EDC Solar One construction. So the only access at this time is at East 20th Street. These are a few of the photos. This is the flood wall construction near the Con Ed facility. Again, we showed photos earlier in the project of the form work that gets set up for the walls. And then they have to pour the concrete from the top to fill that void, which has the kind of waves on it to build the wall. These are a few photos of the sidewalk restoration at Gate 10 from August, and the Side Cove South topsoil and sea rail installation. Again, that's in August also. And then this is, okay. Sorry.
No worries.
And then the preparation, so this is the preparation for the sidewalk restoration at 18th Street, Murphy Brothers Playground entrance, which again, this is kind of the first restoration portion here, and that's from earlier this month. For those who are interested in the air quality monitoring, we do post this monthly at the community advisory group. We have the air quality readings for the month prior. And these are the air monitoring locations that are in the project area 2 sections here in blue, and they shift as the construction work shifts. So in the beginning of the project, they were up by Astor Levy, and now they've shifted down towards the end. We did receive a few questions about the bioswales, and we coordinated with Parks on this. This is their responsibility here. So this is the September and October 23 response from Parks. Okay, perfect. Sorry. So for the commitment number 11, Parks Department will install up to 1,000 trees and 40 bioswale rain garden installations in community districts 3 and 6. To date, the bioswales have not yet been constructed. The bioswale locations will be selected as a subset of the tree locations based on the soil permeability testing, which will be conducted by the park contractor when the contract gets underway in early 2024. At this time, they can't provide a figure on the number of installations in CB6 versus CB3. It really will depend on the results of that soil permeability testing. So if there are other questions, we would have to direct those to the Parks Department. And now we're just going to talk about parallel conveyance quickly. The parallel conveyance work which is the drainage improvements. ESCR PA1 and PA2 focuses on kind of the storm surge coming from the river, whereas the parallel conveyance project focuses on the water that is, coming down from the sky in the stormwater. And so far, the construction activities have primarily been focused in the southern project areas. So here, south of Houston Street is where most of the work has been happening. Mobilization and protection, test pits and site surveys, utility relocations and upgrades. And then we've had some work up in the northern section with the mobilization and tree protection and test pits and site surveys. But now we are going to move into some utility relocation and upgrades. So there will be some work happening here in the northern area, which is in your district. So that's why we wanted to make sure we did bring this to you. So as you can see here in this map, areas 5 and 6 are the areas that that are in the CB6 district, whereas 1 through 4 are in primarily CB3. So at location 5, Avenue C and East 18th Street, there will be test pit activities ongoing. And then at location 6, Avenue C, East 20th Street to East 23rd, we will again continue the test pits and the clearing and grubbing so that the utility relocation work can begin. So the test pits that are in progress, I think most are familiar with the test pits, but typical impacts include limited street parking and temporary traffic pattern changes. Again, that depends on where exactly the test pits are, if they're in the street versus in the sidewalk. And then the water main upgrades, which will be starting, which will be starting in October 2024. So again, that's a bit away. But again, we are getting prepared for those water main upgrades. That may include temporary loss of water service, limited street parking, and temporary traffic pattern changes. But we will be back before then, and we will be able to provide, more updates and notifications as we get closer to that. And the same for the utility relocations, which may cause limited street parking and temporary traffic pattern changes. And now I'm going to hand it over to Jeff Margulies to talk about the flyover bridge pinch point.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Desiree. Jeff Margulies from DDC. Happy to be working on this project, and congrats to the new board members and board chair and committee chair. So I know, I'll just preface this by saying I know this update has been a long time coming, and I wish I had more information to share at this moment in time, but it's basically what is on the screen. So DDC is managing this project on behalf of several city agencies, including the Parks Department, DOT, etc. And so we're figuring out the best alignment for the flyover bridge, which will enhance the pinch point that you're all familiar with at the Con Ed station. And then Con Ed, as you probably know, has some operations that rely on that area from the water. Apologies for the witching hour, my house too. And so right now we're trying to align those needs with Con Ed and the city agencies. DDC builds things and then we leave, so we have to make sure that the end users are okay with what we're building, and that is where we are right now. I hope to have more updates in 2024 as we get more information on where the actual alignment of the bridge will be.
Right. Thank you both.
I have a couple of quick questions for Desiree, not for Jeff, because yeah, it'd be great to hear more from Jeff. May I?
Yeah.
Okay. So Desiree, thank you. I just wanted to kind of check in on the air quality monitoring stations. Have we observed anything that was above the background din, and has that resolved in any sort of modification or cessation of work at the project area too?
So the There have been, and I can go back and we could take a look. There have been some instances where the air monitoring has gone over. And typically the contractor will, again, it happens during work hours, it happens off work hours. And during work hours, what the contractor will do is when they get the alert, they will take a look at they will review the work that is happening. And if it's something that can be shifted, if in certain circumstances there may be an idling truck that's doing a drop off, that triggers the PM 2.5, or if they are, unloading sand or some sort of material that might be causing dust at that point, that's not a sustained activity that's causing dust. They might just have to finish the activity and then wet the area down. So the contractors do get the alerts on when the machines go off. I know the lowest, the monitor, this SOS4, which is down here at the bottom of the Murphy Brothers playground area and the Con Ed facility. There's not a really great, there's not a lot of places we can put it down there. And so that unfortunately is kind of right by the FGR Drive. It's right by the Con Ed parking lot, so unfortunately, there's certain things that the contractor can adjust or pivot in their work activities. There's certain things that just at certain times of the day, there seems to be, higher readings. But we have been, our environmental team has been working with the contractor to make sure that they do the best that they can in reducing the, any exceedances.
Okay, great. And one more question. I noticed specifically at 23rd and 1st under the FDR, as the patterns of traffic have changed, there have been traffic officers stationed there at various points of the day. But I don't see that all the time. Do you know if that's happening specifically around certain activities at the north end of the site, or is that just happening between rush hours, let's say?
Yeah, so our team did have flaggers and traffic enforcement agents there when we were doing construction activity up there. I believe now it has shifted to kind of the city or the NYPD providing traffic enforcement folks up there, because we are kind of out of that area and have moved down. And now that is the kind of traffic pattern that is there. So I know they were trying to focus on, when school was being let out or just in session to help with the kids there and the students. And then potentially if there were, activities after that, or again during rush hour when there is more activity in those areas is when it typically when we typically have flaggers and traffic enforcement agents there. But we can find out a little bit more if there's, if it's seeming like they're there at, strange times, we can figure out if there's
I wouldn't say strange times, but just inconsistent times. And
okay.
I definitely see this week too. So I was just curious if that's something that if there's a concern that we should be looking into, or if that was just around some of the activities there.
Yeah, I know Nadine, our community construction liaison, was fielding some questions that came in about that. So we can certainly, circle back and then just kind of circle back to see if there is a consistent schedule on that, if we could get you any more information.
Right. Thank you so much, Desiree.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Well, Larry, then online.
I just came up from Stuyvesant Cove Park via the ferry, and I was wondering when the plantings on the berms is going to finally be initiated in the area south of 20th Street and between 20th and 21st Street. all planting was halted last spring because they didn't want to plant into the summer season, which is understandable. And wood chips were put on the ground to hold the soil in place. But we're now getting into December and haven't seen the beginning of this. And you mentioned that the southern part of the park is going to reopen soon. Where do we stand?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and we've been asking the same thing too. It looks like the planting, I don't think, is going to get completed this year, and it will get completed then in the spring. I think there is just conversation on if they will kind of reopen that area without the planting, or or wait till earlier next year. So I think these are the conversations that we've been having, or they've been having as a team.
I have a second question relating to the parallel conveyance. Recently, we had a big localized deluge, which disrupted Con Ed's steam service on Avenue C. And is there going to be any adjustment to how you will be using this parallel conveyance for stormwater inundations that are not tied to a coastal storm, so that perhaps this infrastructure could be protected in the future? It may not be protected because of where you're locating the underground storage pipes.
Yeah, so there won't be any adjustments made to the design of the parallel conveyance system. It was designed very specifically. How they will, so after they're constructed, DEP will take over management of the stormwater system and the flood protection as well. So it will be up to DEP then to kind of manage how those systems work. So if there is an oncoming storm, or if there's more of a kind of unknown storm that happens, and how they will control the parallel conveyance system during the different types of storm events, now that it seems like kind of I don't want to say flash flood or thunderbursts or cloud are becoming a little bit more frequently, these kind of downpours. So that will be something that DEP has already been looking into, and then they will kind of decide how that works with the parallel conveyance system. And Con Ed has their own efforts as well to manage their facilities for different flood circumstances.
Right, go ahead, Brendan.
Yeah, and speaking of the parallel conveyance, I do see that Tanya, who is the community construction liaison for the parallel conveyance, is here and has her hand raised. So just wanted to flag that in case Tanya has any answers to some questions related to parallel conveyance. Are you able to unmute yourself, Tanya? Should have permission to unmute. Well, she has her hand raised.
Okay, we can't hear you if you're speaking.
I could try to reach out to her and see if she has.
Okay. All right.
I have some more questions, but I'll wait for.
It was my understanding that that was kind of a closed comment. As far as within the Eastside Coastal Resiliency Project, it is my understanding that there will not be. Once our project is completed and EDC, maintains the waterfront in the park, then it would be up to them if they wanted to make any modifications to the C-rail.
Thank you.
Any follow-ups?
Yes. Now, East Side I'm sorry, East Side Coastal Resiliency adjacent projects that have developed since the initial approval of the plan include repair to the seawall. That's been going on south of the ferry gantry, but there's another compromised area up around 20th Street where there doesn't seem to be any attention that's been paid to the compromised seawall. The area south of the gantry is where the pavement is and the planting beds have collapsed in the past. Any
So
news?
I know, yeah, so I know that our East Side Coastal Resiliency Project has been working with EDC on some sinkhole work and some other work that was potentially not originally in the East Side Coastal Resiliency contract. I'm not sure which parts of the seawall, if any, have been addressed by this project, so I could certainly get back to you. I know Nadine is on. I don't know if she has the answer to that, but we could certainly get back to you on what seawall work, if any, our ESCR PA2 contract has addressed.
A couple of items of old business. One is that the roller gate rails have been filled in with asphalt, and planning was supposedly underway to ameliorate that so that you wouldn't have to send guys out with jackhammers and pickaxes and shovels when you're trying to deploy the gates. What is the plan?
So the gates wouldn't be deployed until the full flood protection is completed. Right now, if we deployed the gates during a storm, there are still gaps in the flood protection that have not been built and constructed yet. So they would not be deployed until the full flood system is fully constructed. So once the flood system is fully constructed, and they will start using the flood protection system at that point in time, then they will have a solution for kind of the rails that are existing, and that asphalt will be removed and the permanent solution would be installed.
Right. Two more quick adjacent questions.
Mm-hmm.
Regarding the ferry landing, you have your contacts with the DEC and the folks who are maintaining the landing. Now that it's getting cold, if there's any information about the replacement of the defective radiant heaters that are non-working before it gets really bitterly cold, appreciate an update on that. And then finally, any progress report or introduction to the beginning of construction on Solar One?
So that would be, so EDC maintains the ferry terminals, and then EDC would be the one to provide the update on Solar One. So I think the CB or the committee would need to reach out to EDC to provide an update on the Solar One construction, and then we could certainly bring back the comment about the ferry terminal question. We can, bring that back to EDC. But again, that might be something that you just also reach out, directly to them on, since it doesn't really fall under the ESCR contract. But we're happy to pass that along.
Thank you, Desiree.
You're welcome. It's great to see everybody.
All right, thank you both. Seeing no more questions or comments, we appreciate your patience and sharing updates. Jeff, hopefully there are more updates to share with us soon. We're very eager and excited. We were reviewing something earlier today, and the pinch point came up in 2013. So 10 years coming up on 11 since that was first mentioned.
Wow.
Hopefully we'll hear soon.
Yes.
But thank you again.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to shares report very briefly. We do have a meeting next month. Hopefully you're all able to join because we have a couple things to vote on. So December 19th is the scheduled meeting time. And we mentioned the fellows. We have 2 fellows helping the committee this year. Very exciting. You'll get to meet them in January. Missy Quick, who's gonna pick up some of the work on POPs, some of what Letty did, some of what the community board already worked on years ago, and Saba Mahmoud, who's gonna continue the work of Maureen from last year, Lorraine, sorry, on environmental resiliency. Again, you'll get to hear a lot more in January. But that's my chair report. So any old or new business from anybody?
I just wanted to clarify that November 16th, the city planning told us about the text amendment for casinos. So that's the date that they actually came to the community board and mentioned it. And there was a hearing today, and they're going to come to us in December, right?
Yeah.
To make it through into the in time.
Any impressions from that hearing?
There's still a possibility that if the whole city votes against the text amendment, that it won't happen. I think there's a good possibility that the entire city could vote against it. So we'll see.
And we're trying to
Curious,
coordinate
what
other community districts as well, who
Yeah.
have some community districts that are next just to us, 4 and 2 have 2 proposals, not 1, unlike us. So we're also trying to coordinate with them. Go ahead, Jim.
Curious, what was the attendance on that meeting? Do you know?
There were 80 when I was on.
Yeah, I think it was around the same when I was on.
Yeah.
I'm surprised. It really was. It's really. I mean, it's really low rent to have done that the way they did it. They let it out the day after Thanksgiving and then have the hearing the day after Thanksgiving break. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, if you're curious, I encourage you to go watch it. It's a little lengthy, but it's quite comprehensive. And the commissioners on the board asked a lot of questions, a lot of the same questions we asked. So it's good to see that the reaction, we're not far off. We kind of are on the same page with most, I would say. Go ahead.
And like, just because the hearing was yesterday, like there's still, or today, there's still.
We'll still get to vote on it, yes.
And individuals still have opportunities to submit comments,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
No, I understand that, but the problem is that the broader community, the wider citizenry isn't aware of this stuff. It just goes under, plus you're coming up into the holiday season. What is it, 60 days they have to do this? 60 calendar days?
February 2nd is what they told us was our deadline, right?
Yeah, let's see if she might be a little sooner than that, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just wondering, do we want to fill out that form? The specifics for the
Should we aim to do it in December? This way folks get to go back and we'll hear from George Janes in December, who reached out and said there are more updates. Now they can speak to us about.
Because they've been doing presentations about it as well. So.
Yeah.
And I thought Susan's question was excellent, like 15,000 versus 5,000 for a small.
Yeah.
And it may not affect and we do have, NYCHA campuses, and if it increases the FAR,
I'll say, I mean, I work on NYCHA campuses as part of my job, and I know a lot of them are underbuilt. They have extra FAR, but like you said, this is going to come either out of ground floor use, residential or other, or out of open space.
Okay.
That space has come from somewhere.
And better to use it as housing.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
Now, with regard to that 15,000, it could be sliced and diced, 3,000 square foot spaces in a contiguous storefront.
Of course.
Could be maybe different parts of the property too. We're talking about a cumulative 15,000 for the campus.
I'm not sure that was clear.
That's one of the things they need to clarify. So we have a number of follow-ups with these fees. So we'll take that on. Any other thoughts? Go ahead.
I just want to respond to your comment about the questionnaire. I think it's great that they only showed us the first two questions, and they were like, do you like puppies? You know, do you like nice weather? You know, and so I think we need to be really careful about how we respond.
Yeah.
Don't you like puppies, Sandra?
I love puppies and nice weather.
All right, on that very note,
DCP
sorry,
did
go
a
ahead.
thing on formula business zoning. They have a study on it in their website somewhere. Don't know, but they did a review. So.
Okay.
I think it goes back to 2019 or somewhere in there, 2017.
Got it. Okay. Seeing nothing else. Thank you all for your patience on a long meeting. Appreciate it.
Thank you.